Listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Dan Arth, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the February 11th issue of the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Article from Local News. Meet the Team, Nakia Clark Robinson. In another life, Nakia Clark Robinson might have been a teacher following in her mother's footsteps. Instead, with a degree in social sciences from the State University of New York at Buffalo, she used her drive to educate and a passion for outreach to become a director of community outreach and engagement at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. I always loved that outreach space, she says. I like to be in the area of teaching and training, doing workshops, so initially I thought I would be a teacher, but I quickly learned I didn't have the patience to do it every day. I wanted more variety, being able to reach different groups of people, whether it was high school students or seniors, faith-based groups, and other organizations, she said. After a 3-year grant-funded position with the Buffalo Urban League, she joined Roswell Park as part of the Institutional Review Board as an assistant reviewing research protocols. I just took it all in like a sponge and learned so much about research, but then also what was lacking in research, she says. Stepping into outreach. When Roswell Park opened the new Office of Cancer Health Disparities Research, Clark Robinson saw an opportunity to bring together everything she was passionate about and all she had learned, the need to bring more voices from underserved communities into conversations about healthcare, cancer research, and prevention. The mission of the new office was to provide access, health equity, information, and resources to all the underserved populations in Western New York, and I knew that's what I wanted to do, she says. Now I had the freedom, and it was my job, duty, and responsibility to go out in the community and educate people about the importance of screening and talk about cancer and how it affects not only the Black population, but the Hispanic, Latino, the indigenous, every population that we consider underrepresented in the healthcare system, and then start to build partnerships. We need to have the community as a partner to get this work done, she says. The new venture made an immediate difference, Clark says. It was wonderful. That's when we really started to see our outreach take off. More people from minority communities were being educated about screening and services at Roswell Park, and screening rates were starting to increase. People were learning more about cancer. Referrals were happening, and people weren't as afraid to come in. Even the researchers and scientists got excited about working in the community, asking how their expertise could help lower cancer rates in the areas we were focused on. As a cancer center, we also started paying more attention to the social factors that affect health. Building relationships in diverse communities. Now, as one of the directors who works in the Community Outreach and Engagement Center at 907 Michigan, Clark is often meeting with people from Buffalo's churches, community-based organizations, and civic groups, building networks that help educate people about cancer and take in action. She also aims to help people feel empowered to join the fight against cancer through her I Can program. Identify, community, action, next steps. Now in her 40s, the education she helps provide is more personal. When I started talking about cancer screening, I wasn't even old enough to get a mammogram. I'm old enough now to get all the cancer screenings. I have family members, friends, and loved ones that have passed after being diagnosed with cancer. I have 2 college-aged sons that I'm making it a point to talk about reducing their health risks for cancer, reminding them of all the things that I would talk about in the community. Between the opportunities for outreach and education at 907 Michigan, efforts to meet with people in Niagara Falls and throughout Western New York, Clark says it's easy to see these efforts are paying off and resulting in early diagnoses and more trust within historically underserved communities and populations at Roswell Park. We can go into churches, we can go into community centers, we can go into our federally qualified health centers, and people welcome us, she says. They want to partner with us. There's not a day that goes by without a community member using the space at 907 Michigan, talking to me, one of our patient navigators, or another COE team member looking for a way to become more involved with Roswell Park's mission. Clark Robinson remains focused on expanding access to research, both for community members and providing opportunities for survivors and caregivers whose lives have been touched by cancer to share their stories with Roswell Park through patient and community research advocacy program called Rock Stars. As we continue to advance our impact on cancer in our community, we need to focus more on research because that's what will ultimately cure cancer. Next in my career, I want to highlight the importance of research and create space for survivors in underrepresented communities. By sharing their stories and shining a light on their experiences, we can inspire others in ways I could never alone. Article from World News. Statue of Barbara Rose Johns, Virginia civil rights activist, replaces Robert E. Lee statue in the U.S. Capitol. By Lauren Victoria Burke, Black Press USA Newswire contributor. In a Capitol building that still has statues in honor of Jefferson Davis, Barbara Rose Johns will be on the first floor of the U.S. Capitol in the same position the Lee statue formerly occupied. The Johns statue now joins Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Rosa Parks as one of 4 black women honored in the U.S. Capitol in statue form. The Commonwealth of Virginia will now be properly represented by an actual patriot who embodied the principle of liberty and justice for all, and not a traitor who took up arms against the United States to preserve the brutal institution of chattel slavery, said House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, standing on stage at the U.S. Capitol on December 16th. The line earned applause, and Leader Jeffries was cheered loudly before saying a word as he approached the stage. The event, a dedication of the Barbara Rose Johns statue in the U.S. Capitol. Johns will replace a statue of Robert E. Lee as one of 2 statues that represent Virginia in the U.S. Capitol. The Lee statue was removed from the crypt on the first floor of the U.S. Capitol in 2020. In a Capitol building that still has statues in honor of Jefferson Davis, Barbara Rose Johns will be on the first floor of the U.S. Capitol in the same position the statue of Lee formerly occupied. The Johns statue now joins Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Rosa Parks as one of 4 black women honored in the U.S. Capitol in statue form. The official dedication and unveiling event featured over 200 members of the Johns family, including her 2 brothers, Ernest Johns and Roderick Johns, and sister Joan Johns Cobbs. Over 800 witnessed the unveiling, which made the event one of the most well-attended unveiling events at the U.S. Capitol. Under federal law, each state is represented by 2 statues in National Statuary Hall. The statues are selected by the state to honor notable individuals from that state's history. In 2018, the John statue was recommended by Virginia's Commission for Historical Statues to replace Virginia's statue of Robert E. Lee in the U.S. Capitol. On April 23, 1951, a 16-year-old Barbara Johns led a walkout of students at the Robert Russa Moton High School in Farmville, Virginia, to protest school segregation and the discriminatory education conditions of black students. Her courage forced this country to reckon with its conscience on a scale much larger than she could ever have imagined, said Senator Mark Warner at the December 16th dedication ceremony. I'm proud to unveil Barbara John's statue in the U.S. Capitol, where she will represent the Commonwealth of Virginia and be recognized for the vital role she played in ending school segregation, he added. At the age of 16, Barbara Johns refused to accept inequality in our public schools. Her determination led to the lawsuit Davis versus County School Board of Prince Edward County, which ultimately became part of the landmark case of Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. Her strength and unwavering belief in equality and justice helped change the entire nation for the better. It is hard to think of a better example of a Virginian to represent the Commonwealth in the United States Capitol, said Representative Bobby Scott during the ceremony. Senator Warner and Representative Scott are both co-sponsors of the Confederate Monument Removal Act. That legislation is focused on the removal of individuals who voluntarily serve the Confederate States of America from display in National Statuary Hall in the U.S. Capitol. Senator Warren has spoken publicly about the need to remove public symbols honoring the Confederacy as part of a broader effort to advance racial justice. Article from the health section. UB study shows that key protein can slow aging process, by Lori Kaiser, Buffalo, New York. The United States is a rapidly aging country. By the year 2050, nearly 1 in 4 Americans will be 65 or older, and many will live into their 90s and beyond. This leads to healthcare and social support concerns and also begs the question, what is the quality of life in those later years? Despite advances in medicine and the eradication of many diseases, it's hard to escape the downfalls of advanced age, lower immunity, and increased chronic inflammation, which can result in arthritis, fatigue, weaker bones, and decreased strength, among other maladies. This chronic activation of inflammation associated with aging has been coined inflammaging, says Keith Kirkwood, DDS, PhD, Senior Associate Dean for Research and Centennial Endowed Chair in the Department of Oral Biology in the University at Buffalo School of Dental Medicine. These age-related changes, known as immunosenescence, lead to a decline in immune resilience and an increased susceptibility to age-related chronic inflammatory diseases. He explains, Kirkwood recently led a lengthy study looking into a way to decrease age-related frailty in mice. He and his team, which includes 2 top geriatric experts, focused on tristatroproline, TTP, an RNA-binding protein that essentially puts the brakes on inflammation. As people age, TTP levels drop, especially in immune cells, leading to more inflammation. The team genetically manipulated one group of elderly mice so that TTP was stabilized. Their findings that these mice had reduced physical frailty scores compared with control mice were published in the 2026 issue of Aging and Disease. This protein really targets RNA for rapid degradation, says Kirkwood, who has focused his decades-long research on the role of obesity and aging in myeloid cell biology as it relates to oral inflammation and periodontal disease and oral cancer. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Most pro-inflammatory mediators have a very short half-life, meaning they only last for minutes, not hours. Funded by a $2.1 million grant from the National Institute of Health. The study took place over the past 6 years at both UB South and downtown campuses. In the United States, the prevalence of frailty in the non-nursing home population ages 65 and older is about 15%, Kirkwood says. Therefore, understanding the mechanisms connecting inflammaging, immune system alterations, bone health, and frailty is essential for developing targeted interventions to improve the quality of life in aging populations. He created the study with longtime collaborators Bruce Troen, MD, Professor-in-Chief of Geriatric Medicine and Director of the Landon Center on Aging at the University of Kansas School of Medicine, who previously taught in UB's Jacobs School of Medicine and Biomedical Sciences, and Perry Blackshear, MD, PhD, and now retired investigator with both the Department of Biochemistry and Medicine at Duke University Medical Center and the Molecular and Cellular Biology Laboratory at the National Institute of Environmental Health Science in the Research Triangle Park. Postdoctoral researchers and graduate students also contributed to the study. Ramkumar Thayagarajan, a postdoctorate who worked for Kirkwood, is now an assistant professor at the University of Kansas, was the first author of the paper. The mice, which were 22 months old, were tested on grip strength, gait speed, treadmill endurance, and energy levels. The frailty score was significantly lower in the male mice with the TTP increase and somewhat lower in the female mice compared with the controls. The increase in TTP resulted in better grip strength, better walking, endurance, and overall better physical performance. Kirkwood explains, these mice had healthier bones and reduced bone breakdown. They exhibited a more youthful-looking immune profile. Article from the sports section. Buffalo Bills moving forward has challenges, by Pat Freeman. The Buffalo Bills moving forward have some significant challenges that sound very familiar with past mistakes. Understanding how to make the best decisions as an owner of a professional franchise cannot be a knee-jerk reaction. One of the questions that must be asked of a head coach is how you plan to improve this franchise in all three facets of the game. The hiring of Joe Brady must be centered on his plan for the defense and what his plan is to improve this group matched with the personnel already on the team. The answer came with the hiring of the defensive coordinator, Jim Leonard, who runs a base 3-4 defense, which means that for 9 years your draft fit for personnel was a 4-3 base. This change is like the bad hiring of Rex Ryan, who changed from a base 4-3 to his version of the 3-4. The change resulted in the franchise that led the NFL in sacks and was ranked number 4 to a significant drop to number 19. This error in hiring judgment put this franchise back 3 to 4 years. Unfortunately, it does not sound like Mr. Pegula took note of these circumstances, because if he did, he would have taken a better route that so far it looks like his new coach hired a defensive coordinator who runs a different defense. The final area that very few talk about is the lack of advertising to black credentialed media outlets by the Buffalo Bills, Sabres, and Bandits. These professional franchises do not sponsor or advertise with black media who have people dedicated to the daily coverage of this organization. This is an NFL problem that every owner around the league needs to take an initiative-taking stance, but so far has fallen on deaf ears. Article from the entertainment section, More Than a Biopic, Michael and the Power of a Global Icon. Article by Stacy M. Brown. Tom Brady stepped into the broadcast booth and, without saying a word, said everything. One glove. Not a gimmick, not nostalgia cosplay, just a quiet, unmistakable signal that even in a football game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Buffalo Bills, the most famous silhouette in modern culture still casts a shadow. 17 years after his death at 50, Michael Jackson remains unavoidable. That is the strange gravity pulling audiences toward Michael, the biopic, arriving April 24th, 2026. Still months away, yet already moving like a global event. Posters are up from Tokyo to Sao Paulo. Trailers are breaking records. The marketing machine is humming, but the fascination is older than marketing. Michael Jackson was not merely famous. Michael was universal. The Beatles, they conquered an era and a hemisphere. Elvis owned America. Jackson belonged to the planet. His face, his glove, his lean forward stance before the beat dropped were recognized in villages without electricity and cities that never slept. Only Muhammad Ali matched that level of global recognition, and even Ali did not moonwalk into living rooms every night. What Michael understands, and what many previous attempts to frame Jackson never did, is that the story cannot be reduced to a ledger of controversy. Those chapters, they do exist. They have been litigated, televised, replayed, monetized. This film chooses another lane. It treats Jackson's life as a cultural force, not a courtroom transcript. That choice matters because of who is involved. Prince Jackson, Michael's eldest son and an executive producer, carries the responsibility of legacy without being forced to relive the ugliest moments of his childhood. Paris and Bijou are allowed distance from spectacle. This is not a public autopsy. It is a family-sanctioned remembrance. Jafar Jackson, Michael's nephew, steps into the role with something no actor auditioning from the outside could ever possess. Muscle memory, blood memory. The physicality is not imitation. It is inheritance. The way he tilts his head, holds a pause, lets silence work before sound arrives. These are not learned tricks. They are live gestures. Directed by Antoine Fuqua and written by John Logan, the film tracks Jackson from Gary, Indiana, to global isolation without turning him into a saint or a spectacle. Quincy Jones appears, Motown appears, the grind appears, the joy appears, the loneliness appears. The point is not balance. The point is truth through artistry. Lionsgate has openly acknowledged that Jackson's story may not fit into a single film. Studio chief Adam Fogelson has floated the idea of more Michael beyond the first release, a notion that would sound indulgent for any other subject. But for Michael Jackson, it sounds almost conservative. What separates Michael Jackson from today's megastars is not talent alone. It is reach through time. His audience includes people who were not alive when Thriller rewrote the rules, when Bad redefined spectacle, when Dangerous fused pop with global rhythm. The film's final power lies in restraint. It does not ask viewers to forget anything. It asks them to remember something else first. The music, the precision, the audacity, the way one man made the world move in unison. I never got the chance to see Michael Jackson live, and I'm not letting this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity slip away. One viewer wrote under the trailer, "Buying this ticket feels like finally reaching out to the king of pop himself, something I've dreamed of for years." You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Article from the Eye on History section, The Old Medicine Cabinet Towards a Better Life by Eva M. Doyle. When I was a child growing up, I remember that my mother always had a medicine cabinet. She kept all kinds of medicines on hand in case someone got sick. There was something to give to us when we had a cold or a fever. Even when we had chicken pox and other childhood diseases, she was prepared. Most people remember the bottle of castor oil and Vicks Vapor Rub our mothers rubbed across our chests when we had a cold. It smelled terrible, but we survived. Our colds were short-lived, and who can forget the castor oil? Nothing tasted worse than a tablespoon of castor oil. My mother made it worse by putting a little orange juice in the spoon. And if you needed help going to the bathroom, don't forget the milk of magnesia. It tasted just as bad. I did not know why Mother put a glove of garlic in a glass of water and later drank it. I have since learned the value of garlic for your health. It is good for colds and a host of other ailments. My parents were from the South. They were both born and raised in Alabama. My mother was from Repton, Alabama, and my father was from Andalusia. Most blacks from the South had survival skills. They had to rely on themselves because of the segregation and racism they faced. It was not always easy for many of them to a doctor nearby or go to a close hospital, especially living in rural farm areas. I learned a lot from my parents and my grandparents. I always keep a medicine cabinet in my bathroom. I also keep various items that I might need to help with pain or just ordinary health problems. This helps to reduce trips to the drugstore. I kept a medicine cabinet when my own children were growing up. The following are some of the items that I find helpful to have on hand. Aspirin or Tylenol in case of a headache or minor pain. Hydrogen peroxide for small cuts. It acts as an antiseptic. Rubbing alcohol can be a surface disinfectant. Asper-Cream for minor aches and pains. You can get the odorless cream. Bandages and cotton for minor cuts, especially if you have children. I always keep them on hand. A thermometer. Today it is important to have a thermometer to test temperatures. Tiger Balm is also good for minor aches and pains. Pepto-Bismol for upset stomachs, indigestion, and diarrhea. Lidocaine for minor itching. Calamine lotion for itching. Always check with your doctor or healthcare provider before using any of the above listed items. You can also invest in a first aid kit. Most kits include the following: gauze of different sizes, antiseptic wipes, a first aid manual, plastic gloves, bandages, and a number of other useful items. Unfortunately, COVID is still around. You should have a supply of masks and hand sanitizers. Keep plenty at home and in your car. With the cold weather and icy conditions that we are experiencing, this information will come in handy when it is not possible to get out to purchase things to help your family stay well. Remember to always check with your healthcare provider to get further advice on how to stay well. Article from the local news: Big wins for Buffalo in governor's budget. One of the New York State Legislature's most important responsibilities is reviewing, amending, and approving the governor's annual budget. After a first look, I believe Governor Hochul delivered Buffalo and our people a lot of big wins in this budget. I believe the governor not only understands the challenges families are facing, but is taking on the challenge of this moment head on. The administration in Washington continues its attacks on New Yorkers, but as the leaders of our state, we will not let them win, said Crystal Peoples-Stokes. This budget not only expands critically needed services, but protects our long-term financial stability, a hot topic being discussed at kitchen tables across our community and the state is affordability. We are committed to making child care affordable by expanding tax subsidies and universal pre-K without increases in taxes. Additionally, there are proposals to rein in other rising costs like auto insurance payments and utility bills. The governor included fully funding foundation aid for our schools, ensuring that our children can access a world-class education without an additional burden on district taxpayers. There is also an exciting new investment in giving our teens the skills to help each other take care of their mental health through the Mental Health First Aid training program. Continued resources are being allocated to build new affordable housing and improving our local infrastructure, including paving roads, replacing lead water pipes, and building major transportation projects. I am pleased that the governor proposed to maintain an increase in aid and incentives for municipalities and would like to see an even larger share go to Buffalo. My office is also in communication with the mayor's office and other stakeholders to assess the city's situation and determine how the state may be able to assist. We know there is more work to do, but I am ready to get into the details of the proposed budget to make sure Buffalo gets what it needs. Article, local news. Mayor Ryan appoints Michael Pacifico as Buffalo City Court Judge. Buffalo, New York. Mayor Sean M. Ryan today announced the appointment of Michael Pacifico as a Buffalo City Court Judge. Pacifico was sworn in by Buffalo City Court Judge Jahar Pridgen in a small ceremony attended by family, friends, and colleagues this afternoon at City Hall. Judge Pacifico replaces Judge Shannon Hennahan following her departure from City Court to become a New York State Supreme Court Justice. Pacifico brings 17 years of legal experience to the bench. His career began as a public defender in Buffalo City Court, where he represented more than 4,000 clients in 5 years. He later served as an Erie County attorney and as a confidential law clerk to New York State Supreme Court Supervising Judge John B. Licata, gaining extensive experience in civil litigation and city judicial operations. Michael Pacifico has spent nearly 2 decades serving those in need, and that experience will guide him on the bench, Mayor Ryan said. His experience, compassion, and deep understanding of Buffalo City Court reflect the values essential to serving as a city court judge. I am confident that Judge Pacifico's commitment to these values will ensure that every person who comes before city court is treated fairly and equitably. Article from the Rochester section. Shakir Family Pet Adoption Event aims to build off last year's success. After raising over $15,000 for local rescues and having 15 adoptions at its first pet adoption event last year, the Shakir Family Foundation is aiming for even more adoptions and donations for its 2025 pet adoption event in August at Northtown Toyota. Partnering with the Shakir Family Foundation for this pet adoption event is a perfect example of how local collaboration can make a real difference, said Danielle Schreiber-Ellis, marketing manager at Northtown Automotive Companies. Community involvement has always been a cornerstone of Northtown's values. We're more than an automotive group. We're neighbors, supporters, and advocates for causes that bring people together. Events like this allow us to give back in meaningful ways and strengthen the community we're proud to be part of, she said. What is the Shakir Family Pet Adoption Event? Buffalo Bills wide receiver Khalil Shakir and his Shakir Family Foundation are partnering alongside Celino Plumbing and Heating, Cooling and Electric, Clyde's Feed, Creekside Dentistry, and Northtown Toyota to feature adoptable pets from 8 local animal rescues. The event will also feature raffles for attendees, giveaways, and more. Proceeds from the event will help Nickel City Canine Rescue, Awesome Paws Rescue, and Buddy's Second Chance Rescue. This is the second year for this event, and the Shakir Family Foundation is looking to build off last year's successes. Donations can be made in person at the event or online at shakirfamilyfoundation.org. Will any Buffalo Bills players be there? Last year's event saw several current players attend the event, including quarterback Josh Allen, who made an unannounced visit. The Shakir Family Pet Adoption Event is from 11 to 3 p.m. on August 30th at Northtown Toyota, located at 1135 Millersport Highway. So hopefully that'll be this August also in 2026. For more information about the Shakir Family Pet Adoption Event, please contact Felicia Gracia at bruckmanmedia.com or Carson Gates at carson@bruckmanmedia.com. So it's Felicia, Felicia, at BRUCKMANMEDI.com. From World News article, former Rikers detainee sues city, says correction officer sexually assaulted him, by Tandy Lau. New York Amsterdam News. A black man filed a civil rights lawsuit in December 2025 accusing Department of Correction officers, DOC, of sodomizing him in 2024 during his pre-trial detention. Court documents in the lawsuit filed on behalf of Kyle Knight, 29, named 2 DOC, Department of Correction officers who allegedly participated in forcibly inserting a finger in his rectum during a retaliatory strip search after one accused guard struck and pepper sprayed him. The filing also alleges the defendants exposed Knight in front of the entire housing unit with just a sheet over him, while also blowing kisses at him and commenting on his genitals. A third DOC staff member, the supervising captain, is also named as a defendant in the lawsuit. The filing alleges that this individual probably did not report the incident because he learned about it afterward. Kyle Knight, also reported the incident through 311 and through the DOC's confidential hotline established by the Federal Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA. The officers at Rikers are supposed to protect us, not hurt or humiliate us, said Knight in a statement. They had no right to sexually violate me. I want to hold them and the Department of Correction accountable for what they did so that it doesn't happen again. Knight has enlisted the Emery, Shelley, Brickenhoff, Abadi Ward, and Maisel, ECBAWM law firm to represent him in suing the city. One of his attorneys, Deborah Greenberger, said the discovery process will shed more light on how the DOC addressed the incident, including whether and how the department conducted a mandated PREA investigation after Knight called. the hotline. The defendants will also have to testify under oath about the incident's details. The lawyers believe the officers contradicted themselves when they separately reported use of force after the encounter. They both accused Knight of refusing to surrender and attempting to dispose of an unknown item, but one officer mentions a second object. Disciplinary measures against Knight over those claims were later dismissed. The hearing officer said that there was no evidence that Kyle was doing the bad things that they said he did, which is pretty notable because that's not a forum where there's full due process and lawyer, said Greenberger. For that complaint to be dismissed speaks to how baseless the officers' claims were about the accusations they made against Kyle. The discovery process could force the city to present a recording made by another corrections officer with a handheld camera showing some or all of the alleged sexual assault. The footage is currently missing despite Freedom of Information law requests by Knight's lawyers, but they believe it exists since other recordings from stationary jail cameras show the DOC staff member taping the encounter. For Greenberger, substandard documentation of Knight's incident draws from broader oversight concerns. She separately co-represents plaintiffs for the Nunez class action, arguably the most crucial lawsuit about excessive and unnecessary force in New York City jails, which led to a settlement agreement mandating a body-worn camera pilot in DOC facilities. The litigation also brought in a court-appointed monitor whose reports addressed proper use of chemical agents like pepper spray. The city fell short of meeting court-ordered reforms from Nunez for nearly a decade, leading to a federal judge greenlighting a receivership-like takeover of DOC jails by a court-appointed third-party remediation manager last year. The reason that we've been pushing for a remediation manager is that there's an ongoing culture of the officers not following the rules, said Greenberger. There's just humanitarian crisis after humanitarian crisis, and the point of a receiver or remediation manager is to have a place where people in custody and officers feel safe walking into the individual buildings and walking onto the island. If we had a culture of safety that would stop not just the pepper spraying, but would also go a long way toward alleviating the sexual assaults that this case is about. The DOC declined comment, citing pending litigation. Article from the Health section. Free webinar examines impact of dementia on Black Americans. Buffalo, New York. In honor of Black History Month, in partnership with the Divine Nine Consortium, the Alzheimer's Association is offering a free live webinar, Alzheimer's and Dementia, What You Need to Know, on February 18th at 8 p.m. The 1-hour webinar will feature a dynamic panel of clinicians, researchers, caregivers, and advocates representing the Divine Nine as we explore the intersection of dementia science, health equity, and lived experience. Together, we'll examine how Alzheimer's and related dementias impact diverse communities, discuss participation in research and clinical trials, and share culturally responsive practices to improve awareness, engagement, and outcomes. Currently, there are more than 7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease. Black Americans are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease as older white Americans. Chronic health conditions associated with an increased risk of Alzheimer's and other dementias, including cardiovascular disease and diabetes, disproportionately affect Black Americans. According to the 2021 Alzheimer's Association Facts and Figures report, nearly 2/3 of Black Americans, 62%, believe that medical research is biased against people of color. A history of exclusion from clinical trials and a lasting history of discrimination from the medical establishment contribute to high levels of mistrust of clinical trials among Black Americans. We know that Alzheimer's disease disproportionately affects Black older Americans, said Carl V. Hill, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Alzheimer's Association. We are committed to continue engaging underrepresented communities, he said. To register for this event, visit Alzheimer's and Dementia What You Need to Know, or call our 24/7 helpline at 1-800-272-3900. That's the 24/7 helpline at 1-800-272-3900. And you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Article from the Health section: Drinks that lower blood pressure fast, from the Charlotte Post. This article is being republished again for the valuable health information. Heart failure is real, and it often begins with high blood pressure. It is a silent killer for many in the African American community. If you aren't experiencing high blood pressure, then you most likely know someone who is. According to the American Heart Association, more than 40% of Blacks are living with high blood pressure. Blacks have the highest prevalence of the disease than any other race. There is a lower rate of taking blood pressure medications among Black people, partly due to lack of access to those medications and a distrust of the healthcare community based on historical discrimination. Some medications also may be less effective in controlling high blood pressure in some Black people. They may need 2 or more medications to achieve their blood pressure goal. Drinks that lower blood pressure fast. Number 8, black tea. Teas are the second most common drink after water for humans. Black tea differs from green tea in that the tea leaves have been fermented. Green tea uses fresh, dried leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant. Black tea, like green tea, has been shown to reduce blood pressure. It's unclear why tea might lower blood pressure, but the active chemicals in tea might do one of the following: relax muscles in the blood vessels, reduce hormones that raise blood pressure, increase nitric oxide, which opens blood vessels. Another drink that helps lower blood pressure fast: beet juice, B-E-E-T. Researchers found the link between a stiffening heart and high blood pressure, which makes the heart muscle thicken. In a 2010 study published in the Journal of Applied Physiology, experts learned that half a liter of beet juice can do wonders for a young man's diet. It improved their exercise and performance each day. Kombucha. Odds are you've seen this drink slowly infiltrating the outer edges of your grocery store. You may have even tried it in an attempt to appear in the know. However, the benefits of kombucha fermented tea lie not in the coolness factor, but in the probiotics. Countless studies have shown that regular consumption, more than 8 weeks of probiotics, can help to reduce blood pressure and even help maintain healthy blood pressure. Another drink to reduce blood pressure, this is number 5, hibiscus tea. According to a 2019 study in the Journal of Advanced Pharmaceutical Technology and Research, participants in the intervention group drank 2 cups of hibiscus tea every morning for 1 month, which resulted in a significant reduction in blood pressure compared to the control group who did not drink the tea. Both groups were advised on blood pressure reduction lifestyle and dietary changes as well. Hibiscus tea is packed with anthocyanins and other antioxidants, which are natural ACE inhibitors. Number 4, low-fat skim milk. As more studies come out about the need for us to drink less cow's milk and look for alternatives, this can be an exception. It's high in phosphorus, potassium, and calcium, 3 nutrients associated with healthy blood pressure, and it's fortified with vitamin D, a vitamin that promotes healthy blood pressure. In a 2019 study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, researchers found that when males and females ate a high dairy diet over 6 weeks that included 5 to 6 servings of reduced fat milk, yogurt, and cheese, participants reduced both their systolic and diastolic blood pressure. This reduction was on average by about 4.5 and 3 points respectively, compared to when they ate 1 or fewer servings of dairy a day for 6 weeks. Number 3 on the list, pomegranate juice. Not only is it tasty, but it's healthy for those with hypertension. Those ACE inhibitors can also be found in pomegranates. In one study, this juice reduced ACE, an enzyme that can raise blood pressure, by 36%. Number 2, cranberry juice. This juice is good for more than just UTIs, filled with anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Cranberry juice can prevent spikes in blood pressure. It can also dilate blood vessels, which increases blood flow. Be sure to get the unsweetened version of cranberry juice, as the added sugar is not good for your heart. And the number 1 drink that is good to lower blood pressure fast is water. And it may sound cliche, but water is one of the healthiest ways to manage hypertension. With dehydration, blood vessels can constrict and the body goes into water-saving mode. Therefore, the body reduces the amount of water lost through sweat, urination, and breathing. Your heart works harder and your blood pressure goes up. Water will help prevent chronic dehydration and your blood vessels from tightening. From the entertainment section article, Redding's new book on race and AI reaches number 1 on Amazon in first week. New York. Only 4 days after its Monday morning release on Monday, January 5th, Rob Redding's Black Power in the Age of Artificial Supremacy hit number 1 on Amazon's Machine Theory bestseller list. The book climbed steadily all week and has drawn global attention for its bold examination of race, technology, and power. The book climbed steadily all week and has drawn global attention for its bold examination of race, technology, and power. Redding, known for his outspoken commentary and long-standing work in independent black media, argues that artificial intelligence is far from neutral. He describes it as a new arena where old hierarchies are being rebuilt through code, data, and design. His book calls for a radical rethinking of who controls emerging technologies and who ultimately benefits from them. This book is a call to arms, Redding says. We must reclaim control over the narrative and the technology that shapes our future. AI can either serve the oppressor or be used as a weapon of liberation. The book blends historical analysis, cultural critique, and political theory to examine how racial bias becomes embedded in algorithms and automated systems. A central chapter co-written with Redding's husband, Redding Shim Kwet Young, explores the cultural and linguistic roots of bias in technology. Redding Shim draws parallels between slurs used against robots in science fiction and the racist language historically used to dehumanize black people. In our chapter, we explore how the language used to bemoan robots like Clanker mirrors the racist slurs that dehumanize black people. Redding Shimsen said, "This chapter is about how we rehearse and normalize systemic racism through substitution, phonetics, and cultural history." The book also introduces new concepts such as rebootology and robootism, frameworks Redding uses to argue for black agency in the digital age. He situates these ideas within a broader scholarly conversation, engaging thinkers such as Nick Bostrom, Stuart Russell, Sophia Noble, Ruha Benjamin, and Frantz Fanon. This is more than a book, Redding says. It is a blueprint for black liberation in the digital age. We are fighting for our future, and AI is the battlefield. The book cover features his own painting, Black Power, Unapologetically Militant, a work that sold for $10,000. His award-winning talk show, Redding News Review Unrestricted, can be found on his venerable website, readingnewsreview.com. That's readingnewsreview.com. And you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the February 11th issue of the Buffalo Criterion. We read from the Buffalo Criterion every Friday at 7 p.m. And your reader today has been Dan Arth. Thank you so much for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times. At 9 o'clock, we'll be airing Buffalo Spree, and at 10 o'clock, we have episode number 7 of Denied Access by Don Bentley with Vince Flynn. Stay with us. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555.
Hello,